The Broken Boot by John Galsworthy. The actor Gilbert Caister, who had been out for 6 months, emerged from his East Coast seaside lodging about noon in the day after the opening of Shooting the Rapids on tour, in which he was playing Dr. Dominic in the last act. A salary of £4 a week would not, he was conscious, remake his fortunes, but a certain jauntiness had returned to the gait and manner of one employed again at last. Fixing his monocle, he stopped before a fishmonger, and, with a faint smile on his face, regarded a lobster. Ages since he had eaten a lobster. One could only long for a lobster without paying, but the pleasure was not solid enough to detain him. He moved up street and stopped again before a tailor's window, together with the actual tweeds in which he could so easily fancy himself refitted. He could see a reflection of himself in the faded brown suit wangled out of the production of Marmaduke Mandeville the year before the war. The sunlight in this damned town was very strong, very hard on seams and buttonholes, on knees and elbows. Yet he received the ghost of aesthetic pleasure from the reflected elegance of a man long fed only twice a day, of an eyeglass well rimmed out from a short brown eye, of a velour hat salved from the production of Educating Simon in 1912. And in front of the window he removed that hat, for under it was his new phenomenon, not yet quite elevated, his Miche Blanche. Was it an asset or the beginning of the end? It reclined backwards on the right side, conspicuous in his dark hair, above the shadowy face, always interesting to Gilbert Caister. They say it came from atrophy of the something nerve, an effect of the war. Undernourished tissue, rather disgusted, perhaps. But he walked on, and became conscious that he had passed a face he knew. Turning, he saw it also turn on a short and dapper figure. A face rosy, bright, round, with an air of cherubic knowledge, as of a getter-up of amateur theatric. Bryce Green? By George. Caister? It is. Haven't seen you since you left the old camp. Remember what sport we had over Gotter Grampus? By Jove, I'm glad to see you. Doing anything with yourself? Come and have lunch with me. Bryce Green, the wealthy patron, the moving spirit of entertainment in that South Coast convalescent Camp 7, and drawing slightly, Caister answered, I shall be delighted. But within him something did not drawl. By God, you are going to have a feed, my boy. And elegantly, threadbare, roundabout, and dapper, the two walked side by side. Know this place? Let's go in here. Phyllis, cocktails for my friend Mr. Caister and myself, and caviar on biscuits. Mr. Caister is playing here. You must go and see him. The girl who served the cocktails and caviar looked up at Caister with interested blue eyes. Precious. He had been out for 6 months. Nothing of a part, he drawled. Took it to fill a gap, and below his waistcoat the gap echoed. Yes, and it will take some filling. But your cocktail along, Caister. We'll go into the little further room. there'll be nobody there. What shall we have? A lobster? And Keister murmured, I love lobsters. Very fine and large here. And how about you, Keister? So awfully glad to see you. Only real actor we had. Thanks, said Keister. I'm all right. And he thought, he's a damned amateur, but a nice little man. Sit here. Waiter, bring us a good big lobster and a salad, and then a small fillet of beef with potatoes fried crisp, and a bottle of my special hock. Ah, and a rum omelette. Plenty of rum and sugar. Twig? And Keister thought, thank God I do. They had sat down opposite each other at one of two small tables in the little recessed room. Luck? Said Bryce Green. Luck, replied Keister, and the cocktail trickling down him echoed, luck. And what do you think of the state of the drama? Oh ho! A question after his own heart, balancing his monocle by a sweetish smile on the opposite side of his mouth. Keister drawled his answer. Quite too bally. Awful. Yes, said Bryce Green. Nobody with any genius is there. And Keister thought, nobody with any money. Have you been playing anything great? You were so awfully good in Gotta Grampus. Nothing particular. I've been rather slack. And with their feel around his waist, his trousers seemed to echo. Slack. Ah, said Bryce Green. Here we are. Do you like claws? Thanks. Anything. To eat until warmed by the pressure of his waist against his trousers. What a feast! And what a flow of his own tongue suddenly released. On drama, music, art, mellow and critical. Stimulated by the round eyes and interjections of his little provincial host. By Jove, Keister, you've got a Michie Blanche. Never noticed. I'm awfully interested in Michie Blanches. Don't think me too frightfully rude, but did it come suddenly? No, gradually. And how do you account for it? Try starvation, trembled on Keister's lips. I don't, he said. I think it's ripping. Great. Have some more omelette? I often wish I'd gone on a regular stage myself. Must be a topping life if one has talent like you. Topping? Have a cigar. Waiter, coffee and cigars. I shall come and see you tonight. Suppose you'll be here a week? Topping. The laughter and applause. Mr. Keister's rendering left nothing to be desired. Its are in the true spirit of... Silence recalled him from his rings of smoke. Bryce Green was sitting, with cigar held out and mouth a little open, and bright eyes round as pebbles, fixed on some object near the floor, past the corner of the tablecloth. Had he burnt his mouth? The eyelids fluttered. He looked at Keister, licked his lips like a dog nervously, and said, I say, old chap, don't think me a beast, but are you at all, rocky? I mean, if I can be of any service, don't hesitate. Old acquaintance, don't you know, and all that? His eyes rolled out again towards the object, and Keister followed them. Out there above the carpet he saw it. His own boot. It dangled slightly, 6 inches off the ground, split right across, twice, between lace and toe cap. Quiet! He knew it. A boot left him from the role of Bertie Custairs in Dupay, just before the war. Good boots, his only pair, except the boots of Mr. Dominic, which he was nursing. And from the boot he looked back at Bryce Green, sleek and concerned. A drop, black, when it left his heart, suffused his eye behind the monocle. His smile curled bitterly. He said, "Not at all. Thanks." "Why?" "Oh, nothing. It just occurred to me." His eyes, but Keister had withdrawn the boot. Bryce Green paid the bill and rose. "Old chap, if you'll excuse me. Engagement at 2:30. So awfully glad to have seen you. Goodbye." "Goodbye," said Keister. "Thanks." He was alone, and chin on hand, he stared through his monocle into an empty coffee cup, alone with his heart, his boot, his life to come. "And what have you been in lately, Mr. Keister?" "Nothing very much lately. Of course, I've played almost everything." "Quite so. Perhaps you leave your address?" "Can't say anything definite, I'm afraid. I should be willing to rehearse on approval. Or if I could the part." "Thank you. Afraid we haven't got as far as that." "No?" "Quite." "Well, I shall hear from you, perhaps." And Keister could see his own eyes looking at the manager. God, what a look! A topping life. Cadging for work. A life of draughty waiting for concealed beggary, of terrible depressions, of want of food. The waiter came skating around as if he desired to clear. Must go. 2 young women had come in and were sitting at the other table between him and the door. He saw them look at him, and his sharpened senses caught the whisper. "Sure, in the last act, don't you see his Méché Blanche?" "Oh, yes, of course. Isn't it? Wasn't he?" Keister straightened his back. His smile crept out. He fixed his monocle. They had spotted his Dr. Dominic. "If you've quite finished, may I clear?" "Certainly. I'm going." He gathered himself and rose. The young women were gazing up, elegant, with a faint smile. He passed them close, so that they could not see, managing his broken boot. Notes. The sunlight mercilessly exposed all the shabbiness of his suit. Through the glass of his monocle, one could see his soft brown eye as if framed by the monocle. Méché Blanche is French. A lock of white hair. Are you rocky? Here. Are you in difficult circumstances? A rocky situation. A difficult situation. A situation full of problems.